Good morning, everybody. Oh, there are a few voices there. It's nice to hear. We're small in number, but I'm sure we're richly blessed to be here. So I'd like to extend my own welcome to you this morning, and I trust that the next 45 minutes will do your heart good, and you'll leave from here spiritually uplifted. I'd like to start by thanking God for 78 years of uninterrupted perfect health, which he gave me yesterday. That was my birthday. And so I consider myself a very, very, very privileged man. I've been through a bit of adversity in my life, as you already know. I'll tell you a bit more about that today. But I'm richly blessed, and I'm sure you would agree that you're richly blessed too, regardless of your circumstances. You are here, and so is the Lord. Shall we just begin with a short word of prayer? Our gracious Lord and loving Father, what a wonderful privilege it is to come to church and to come to Sabbath school and to learn of Thee and to spend a precious hour with Thee. And as we spend this hour, Lord, we pray earnestly that Your Holy Spirit will be here. We pray that it'll touch the hearts of everyone, especially those that are watching online and those who are in other bubbles. May they be blessed and feel the presence of the Holy Spirit. And may we leave here knowing that we have a wonderful God, and He will save us when He comes to redeem us into His own. May that day come soon. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I've entitled my message today, The Building Blocks of Faith. I wonder, what are some of the building blocks of faith? First of all, what is faith? There's a great illustration of what faith is in Hebrews, but there's also a very, very good illustration of what faith is in the book Think and Grow Rich, which was written by Napoleon Hill. It says, faith is the eternal elixir that gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. Faith is the eternal elixir that gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. So what is an elixir? An elixir is a solution or a homogeneous mixture. If you like, one or two substances that are joined together to form a concoction that gives life, power, and action to the body. That's what an elixir is. Two or more substances. And we read in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So what is a substance? A substance is two or more molecules, something concrete, something you can touch, something you can feel. That's what a substance is. And faith is the substance, something concrete, something tangible of something hoped for. Hope is a future concept. You can't hope that yesterday the weather will be fine. You can only hope that tomorrow it will be fine. So hope is a positive expectancy about something in the future. The evidence of which is not seen. Evidence is something that you see after the event. You normally look for evidence after there's been a crime, so an event has taken place, and then they look for the evidence. And so we're told here that faith is the substance of something future, the evidence of which is already in existence, although not seen. So it's a very goal-directive thing. And there are two things that I think, well, there's a number of things that become the building blocks of faith. And one of those is extraordinary events, like miracles, things that happen to you that are so extraordinary that you simply can't explain them. And the other, of course, is answered prayer. When you pray, you ask God for something, and He answers it in a way that is just so utterly phenomenal that you have difficulty in comprehending that He actually did it. And so those are the two things I want to concentrate on today. And I want to tell you of some of my experiences as the building blocks of my own faith occurred. And I just wonder whether this thing is switched on. Is it? Yeah. When I told you last time I was on this pulpit that of my experience up until the time I came to New Zealand, and when I became an Adventist, and how I became an Adventist, and how I became very troubled because of certain members of my family that were bashing me up emotionally, and life was very, very difficult. But I was also very successful at the time, and I bought a section in Governor's Bay, and this is the section here, in the dark blue. And the neighbour, how would I put this? The neighbour was a new guy in New Zealand. He'd been persuaded by one of the other neighbours to come to New Zealand, who was a butcher from London. And he bought the section next door, and he built this. He started to build this house. Not before I'd already decided to build my house. And so I designed this house, and I got it all organised with the mortgage and everything else, and I was ready to start work. And I went over to Governor's Bay a couple of days before to find that this guy had started building this house. And I knew that I was going to get built out because the land contours upwards here. So this section up here is much, much higher than it is down here. And so I needed to completely redesign the house. And so I spent the whole of Friday designing a new house. I finished it on Saturday night because I rested in the Sabbath. I took it to the builder on the Sunday. It was a completely different house, by the way. The first house was on 2 levels. This one was on 4. And so I took it to the builder on the Sunday. He repriced it. Monday, I took it to the mortgagee. I got the mortgage organised. By Thursday, I had the permit. And the following Monday, the builder started work on a completely different house. So in those days, New Zealand was the can-do country. Today, it's the can't-do-anything country. But in those days, you could do an awful lot. And so I started to build my house way up here, you see. And then this guy from England decided he didn't want to stay in New Zealand, or his wife didn't, so they sold up and went back to England. And they sold the house to another Englishman who happened to be the Deputy Medical Officer for Health for Christchurch. And you've all met nasty people in life, haven't you? Right? Well, this guy was one of the nastiest people you'd ever meet. He was a bully, he was bombastic, he was rude, he was arrogant, he was everything but a decent person. Everything but a decent person. In fact, so bad was it for him in Governor's Bay over the period of time, eventually his children couldn't go to school there and he had to leave because they pretty much run him out of town. But he happened to be my neighbour from hell. So as well as having a brother that was putting the boot into me for being a Christian, I happened to have this guy living next door to me. So I built a couple of lovely gate posts here, you see, and I was going to put in a nice driveway up to the house. And so he decided to build a fence. And where did he build it? Right there. So, as you can imagine, arguments started and letters went backwards and forwards to solicitors and things got rough and the atmosphere was very, very, very untenable. And then he decided to build a fence between the 2 sections, and so every time he put a piece of string from one end to the other, and every time he put a fence post in, he'd lean it up against the string, and then the next one, and so eventually the fence between us went like that. And this guy would just antagonize everybody in the neighborhood. Well, you know, God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. This went on for years, and it was just such an untenable place to be. But one day, on the 1st of August 1975, some of you will remember it, there was one heck of a storm came through here. The winds were 140 miles an hour. And up on Worsley Spur, which goes up the hill, there was a fabulous forest. And this storm stripped the whole lot out, every piece of it. Now, if you go to the top of the hill there, you'll notice that it's in a gully and the rest of the Summit Road goes up higher. And over the other side, you've got this valley. You go down the hill and it goes around a few bends and there's this valley. And the wind went down that valley at such a rate that it caused a vortex at the bottom. You know what a vortex is? It's a whirlwind. And the whirlwind was right at the bottom of the valley where we lived. And across the other side of the valley was one of these. I'm sure you recognise it. It's a good old-fashioned double garage, weatherboard double garage. And suddenly, I'm stood at my window watching the storm come in, and suddenly the wind literally picked up this double garage off of its foundations, and it started flying directly towards my house. It all happened in about 3 or 4 seconds, this. But it was in slow motion for me. I'm stood at the window, and I'm watching this garage coming towards me, far closer and closer and closer. And it got to about 50 yards away. And then an amazing thing happened, because I was sitting there just waiting for it. And the funny thing was that I was sort of relaxed watching it, knowing that I was about to die. But I wasn't sort of concerned about it, but because it was just going to happen, you know. Suddenly, this garage split into 2 totally different pieces. One went that way and smashed the smithereens in the section next to me. And the other, it's about 50 meters off the ground. And the other piece suddenly took a massive dive to the left, right, as though it was targeted. And it picked up that fence, literally the entire fence. I'm talking about concrete posts and everything, ripped the whole lot out of the ground and put it right through this guy's casement window and smashed up his entire front of his house and all of his antique furniture. Smashed it to smithereens. I've never seen anything like it. He had a tarpaulin over his house for the next 2 months while he had to get someone to fix it. I've never seen God move in such a dramatic way as such a young Christian man. And I'll tell you what, I sat there, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. So these are some of the experiences that I had as a very, very, very early Christian. It struck me that text in Psalms 55, verse 22. Cast thy burden on the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. So God moved in a mysterious way that day. A little while later, I'd been out selling one night, and it was one of those nights which was a filthy weather. It was dark in the middle of winter. It was black. It was rain. It was snowing, cats and dogs. It was just going for it, you know. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. And I'd been out selling, and I was on my way home, and I got to the bottom of Hackthorne Road, and it said, road closed. So I thought, it's not closed for me. Because I either had to go all the way around Gebby's Pass to get into Governor's Bay, or I had to go all the way down through Littleton. And I thought, no, I'm going to chance going over the hill. So I drove up Dyers Pass Road. And I get all the way up to the top, which is why I explained there's a valley there. If you look at it, it's very low there. But the Porthills were covered in snow, literally covered in snow. It was that deep on the main summit road. But just through the gap there, it was probably about 2 or 3 inches of snow. So I edged my way up there, and I'm thinking, good, I've got through. I'm over the hill, so I'm home. I'm home and hosed, lovely. So I go down the other side, and you know the road bends to the right, and it bends to the left. There's a long straight, and it goes around a right-hand bend, and there's a sharp left-hander, and it comes down the other side of the valley. Then there's a sharp right-hand bend, and you carry on down, then there's a bluff. And you go around the bluff, and you can see Governor's Bay, and my house was there. I could see my house. And just as I approached the bluff, there was 6 feet of mud right across the road. So I'm thinking, come all this way. Here it is about 11:30 now, and it's pitch black. There's no one around, and it's snowing. And I'm thinking, I've got to go all the way back around to Governor's Bay, around to Gebby's Pass or Littleton or whichever way. So I plod on back up to the top of the hill. When I got to the top of the hill, an incredible thing happened. I don't know where it came from, but just as I approached the top of the hill, some vehicle came up the other side with some lights blaring and went right across in front of me and started to head off towards Gebby's Pass on the Summit Road. And of course, you go over a cattle grid there, and then the road goes up a hill, and of course, it's this deep in snow. So instantly I thought, follow this guy. I never thought about the consequences of it. I just thought, he's here. I'll get in behind this guy. If he goes over the edge, at least I've got time to stop. I'm serious. It was a pretty selfish thought, but I'm thinking, I'm okay as long as I'm following this guy. I never thought that he might go into a house somewhere, in which case I'd be stranded up there, and there'd be nobody up there, or I'd have probably died of exposure up there. But I got in behind this guy, and I'm about as far behind him as it is to the back of the church. And he's going 90 miles an hour. He's just, well, he wasn't doing 90 miles an hour, but you know what I mean. He was romping along, and I'm having trouble staying with him. And I've got this old car, an old Morris Oxford, and I'm struggling to keep up with him. You know, now believe me, go up there today and test it. It's a long, long way from the sign of the Kiwi right the way down through, because you go around through the sign of the Bellbird and you go on up that road. It's all bends and twists, and it's a long way to get down towards Gebby's Pass. I mean, I'm talking 5 or 6 kilometres. Go try it. It's a long, long way. And I'm racing behind this guy and thinking, I can't stay with him. And we get all the way along this road, and then we finally start to go downhill at the other side. And we start going down and down and down, and finally the snow finishes. And we're on just a wet road. And as we're going down there, this guy goes around this bend. I couldn't see him because he'd gone around the bend. I go around the bend, and he's vanished. Totally vanished. Never saw him again from that day to this. I looked around other bends to see if I could see him. I'm thinking, has this guy gone over the edge, or what happened? There's no houses up there. There's no drives. There's nothing up there. I'm talking about 1974, 75, somewhere around about there. So the following day, I get up and I check with the police. Did anybody have an accident up there? No. This vehicle came from somewhere and went from somewhere. To this day, no idea. But those sort of experiences make you realize that there's some supernatural power out there that is up, over and above you. And I'm certain that I have a guardian angel, and I'm certain you do too. I can't wait to meet him. So if your guardian angel's worth meeting, wait till you see Jesus. Because he's worked so many miracles in my life that some of these things are totally unexplainable. As you know, 14 years ago, I got divorced. And we had a house up on Huntsbury Hill, and it had a drive-on section. And there was we'd built this beautiful stairway down, and there was a lovely low fence along the top, which was only put there to stop you falling over into the courtyard below. And in the courtyard below, we had, my ex-wife had this big pot, and in it was growing a wisteria. And this wisteria had grown right along this fence. It was a magnificent thing. And all along below, she'd planted lavender all along the bottom. And it looked a picture. But the night before she left, she dug up all the lavender and took it with her. And so the garden was a wreck. And this was about the August. And I lost about 10 kilos. I was about 54 kilos at the time. And I was history. I was suffering from what they call chronic fatigue syndrome, which I found out later. And when you're in that situation, you're totally helpless. You've got no energy. So I knew I didn't want to spend Christmas by myself. So I rang up my niece in Australia, and I said, do you mind if I come and spend Christmas with you? And she said, yeah, that'd be fine. Love to see you, whatever. So I booked up and I went. But before I went, I asked my neighbour, would you make sure, or get your daughter, she's a lovely girl, would you make sure that all the plants are watered? Because I'm going to sell the house and I need it looking pristine. So could you make sure, because it was a stinking hot summer. And so he agreed he'd get it all watered for me. So I came back in February, and the one thing they hadn't watered was this wisteria. And I'm not kidding you, I looked at it and you could snap it off. It was absolutely history. And it was a mess on the fence. You can imagine it, can't you? This dead piece of woven stuff hanging on this fence, and the garden's all been ripped up. And if there's one thing I know in life, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so when somebody drives onto your section to buy the house, you want it looking the berries, don't you? And this was looking a dog's breakfast, just to be kind. So I prayed to God, what am I going to do? I need this wisteria.
I said to God, would you please give me back my wisteria? I was desperate for this wisteria. So he said, water it. So I watered it. And I watered it, and I watered it, and I watered it. I watered it. I was sick of watering the thing. It was sweltering hot, and I carried on watering this thing. And you know what? Suddenly it sprung back into life. I've never seen anything like it. It came back more glorious than it was before. It was hanging on the fence. It was so pristine, it wasn't funny. And you all know what happened in 2008. That was when the GFC happened, which was the global financial crash. Well, at the end of February, the 28th, I'd had this house on the market, and I had 3 offers. And the best offer was the best offer. And that sounds a funny thing to say, but sometimes the second best offer is a better offer than the best offer because the terms and conditions might be good or might be better. And so you might be encouraged to take a lesser price because you've got better conditions. But this had the highest price. It had the biggest deposit, $50,000. And it had a 6-month deferred settlement. So that means I could stay in the house for 6 months while I relocated, and I had to sell off a whole lot of real estate. I think I sold 8 or 9 properties or something just to settle it all up. And you know what? He sold that house for me on the 28th of February, 2008. If you check the records, on the 1st of March was when the property market went south. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. My ex-wife was a travel agent, and we went everywhere. And we stayed in all the best places, because everywhere we went, she'd just take out this IATA card and organize a free room for us, and we'd get an executive suite in a top hotel or whatever. And so I never, ever, ever organized any of my transportation, ever. And so after that, I had to do it for myself. And of course, this was a serious problem for me because I wasn't really mentally up to it. And by this time, I'd gone to live in Thailand. And I got invited to a conference in the USA. And so I better just back up a bit. Prior to all this happening, I had a solar heating business. And we were importing stuff from China. And I had a guy doing all that for me. His name was Eddie Zhu. He was a graduate of Lincoln University. And Eddie was colloquial English and colloquial Mandarin. He was a fabulous guy. And I was mentoring him, and he was my minder in China. And so we used to be the mentor and the minder. We went everywhere together. And I don't know if you've ever been to China, but you can't go to China unless you get an invitation. You have to get an invitation from somebody in China to go there, okay? And so I'd got this invitation to go to China. And I don't know if you have been to China, whether you've been to Shanghai Airport. Shanghai Airport is massive. It's one of the biggest airports in the world. And most airports are in an H shape. So the road comes in here, and the immigration and all that is in the middle, and the gates are all around here, you know. Well, Shanghai is so big, there's a dual carriageway running through the middle, right? So it's got 2 immigrations, one on each side. And when you go to the immigration there, it's got 26 lanes, and normally there's about 100 to 200 people in each lane. And you can spend 2 hours waiting to get through immigration there. It's got 5,000 people in there anytime. So I booked this flight to go to the USA, and I thought what I'll do is on the way back, I'll go and visit Eddie in Shanghai. So I asked him, would you send me an invitation? So he did. And so I had this invitation to go into, and I had the visa stamp, which I had to do in Bangkok. That's another story. I'll tell you about that some other time. So I had it all organized. And I booked this flight on Sri Lankan Airlines to Shanghai and Air Canada to Vancouver, and then you go into the US through Vancouver. What I didn't realize, which wouldn't have happened because if my former wife had organized it, I didn't realize there was no code sharing between the 2 flights. And so when I went to check in Bangkok, they told me you're going to have to deplane in Shanghai, go through customs, and you're going to have to go through an immigration at the other side to get on the plane to Vancouver. And there was only about an hour and 50 minutes between the two flights. So you can imagine it. I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to do this? How on earth am I going to... First of all, I've got an invitation. I'm going to arrive there, and I'm going to have to give up this invitation, which means I can't go and see Eddie on the way back because I'll have wasted this invitation to get into China. So committed to prayer and asked the Lord what he's going to do about it. I got on the plane. We flew to Shanghai, and what I'm going to tell you was so uncanny, I couldn't believe it. Here's the H, right? We came in on the very bottom gate here. So it's about a mile, I suppose, to get to the immigration. And then Air Canada's flying out the other side down this H here. And I got an hour and a half. And I've lost my invitation. I got off the plane. I get on the travelator. I'm running. I'm running like mad down the travelator. I get to immigration, which normally has 5,000 people in it. There was one person in the entire immigration hall. One person. And that was a Chinese immigration officer. I was the only civilian in the place. So I rushed up to this lady and I said, no, I've got a problem. Do you know what? She spoke the Queen's English. She said, how can I help you, sir? I said, I've got a problem. This is what's happened, la-di-da-di-da. She said, I'll give you a one-day visa to enter China, which will mean that your invitation is secure to come back. She snapped her fingers. This guy came over. She said, would you take this gentleman down to the carousel, get his bags for him, take him through the system, and take him over to the other side and get him on the other plane on the other side? I get over the other side, and the plane going to Canada is delayed for 4 hours. So I could sit up there and have a nice meal and relax, get on the plane and go to Canada. You wouldn't read about it, would you? You wouldn't read about it. I must tell you another story. This story takes a bit of telling. It's one of the simplest interventions I've ever seen God do. One of the simplest interventions I've ever seen him do. But the story's a complicated one, so you have to concentrate. This concerns my lovely, lovely lady, Moana. She was working up in Nakhon Ratchasima, which is in Isan, okay? And I'm living down in Jomtien, which is in Chonburi, okay? Now, Thailand operates on a provincial basis. What that means is, well, first of all, what it means is they're rather like different countries, okay? So before you can go there, you've got to get a work permit, and you've got to get that before you can get a visa. Work permits are issued by the Labor Department, and visas are issued by the Immigration Department. And these two documents are intrinsically locked together, okay? Once you've got them, every 90 days you have to go to immigration and check in that you're still here and that you're in a legal status. But you can actually go to the Immigration Department anywhere in the country. So, for example, if you've gone on holiday in Koh Samui, for example, you can, and it's your 90 days, you can go to the immigration there and they'll stamp your visa all right, as long as everything's in order. And then every 12 months, you have to renew your visa, okay? So, it's as though you move to a different country if you change provinces. And Moana renewed her visa, her work permit and her visa, and then a couple of months later, she decided she wanted to come and live down my neck of the woods. So we organized all of that, and there's another little miracle in here because she had to get a job, first of all. And so we had to go around a few schools to get her a job. So I got on my iPad, and I got onto Google Translate, and I typed in there, human resources person, please. And it came up in Thai, all the squiggly writing. And so I pulled that up on the front of the iPad, and I walked into this school, knocked on the window, and the lady comes to the window and just put it up in her face. She said, oh, you go down, you go, oh, no, come with me, I'll show you. So she marched us down to the school director's office. And so we walk in there, and what can I do for you? And Mo says, I'm looking for a job as a teacher. So he said, oh, we go through the agency. You have to go through the agency. So I started engaging him in conversation. He was a lovely man. In the meantime, she's rummaging through her stuff, and she pulls out her work permit and her teacher's license, and she puts it on the table. And he said, oh, you've got a work permit and a teacher's license. He said, oh, we don't need to go through the agency then. He said, I can employ you direct. So he gave her an employment contract straight away, and she started work the following Monday or something. Instant. So life's great. Then we went and got an apartment. That's another story. I won't bore you with that. Anyway, 90 days comes. We go down the immigration, check in. Life's good, no problem. 90 days, we check in again. Then comes the renewal of the visa and the work permit. So she goes to the local department to get a work permit. And they suddenly realize that the former work permit hasn't been cancelled by the former employer, right? Because when you move provinces, all that has to be cancelled and renewed in the place you're going to. And that hadn't been done. So they issued her with a new work permit because she had an employment contract. And the first thing they do is then notify the immigration department. And so now she's classed as an overstayer. And overstayers are treated very seriously in Thailand. You get charged 500 bahts a day, and you can be deported. And so here she's up for a fine of somewhere in the vicinity of $5,000 because she's 360 days overdue. So we're thinking, right, we've got to go down to the immigration department now and renew the visa. Now, fortunately, you've got to understand what it's like in Pattaya immigration department. It's full of expat Europeans. And to be frank with you, some of them are pretty low lifes. I don't mean to be disparaging of anybody, but they are. They'll turn up in a singlet and they'll swear and curse at people and treat them as they treat the Thai people pretty roughly. But whenever I went down, I'd always put a shirt and tie on. And of course, I'd got to know the immigration people quite well. And there was always a very gentlemanly, shall we say, rapport between us. And so, but we knew this time we were going to be in serious trouble. So before we went in there, we had a serious prayer. Lord, can you fix this for us? Can you fix this for us? So we go in there and we sit down. They've got a numbering system. They give you a ticket with a number because there's so many people. And when your number comes up at a certain place, then you go and sit at the desk. So we're sitting at the desk there, and this guy there, oh, morning, how are you? Good, thanks. So she puts all her documents on the table, and he looks at them, and he's just reading them. Now, normally what would happen is they've got a green sheet, which is in your passport. They tear that out, screw it up, throw it in the bin, put in a new one, clip it, stamp it, right? And it's a 2-minute job. So he's looking at this, and without a word, he's got it on his desk, and all of a sudden, another immigration officer walked right by him and put an A4 envelope on his desk right on top of these documents. Just like that, flopped it, and just walked off. So he picked up this envelope, opened it up, read it. I don't know what it was about. He read it, and he put it down, and he picked up his thing, and he went stamp, 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 and gave her everything. And we walked out of there as though nothing had happened. Utterly incredible. Just utterly incredible. I've never experienced anything like it. I could keep going for ages on different things that happened in our time in Thailand. Another time, I brought Mo here for a holiday, and we'd processed her visa. And we'd done that in Thailand. And believe me, I mean, as much as I love the Thai people, they're extremely difficult to deal with. For a start, they don't have any tense in their language. There's no future or past tense in their language. Everything's about today. Okay, so they live, one of the greatest things about their country is they live in the present moment. We don't, we're always worried about tomorrow and what happened in the past. We have these two immobilizers, worry and guilt. We worry about the future, we're guilty about the past. And the Lord tells us, just live in the present moment. They do that in Thailand. But they're difficult to deal with. And we decided that we would process her partnership work visa here for New Zealand, but we'd process it in the Philippines. And so we'd prepared everything, and it was the 20th of June, and we were leaving on the 4th of July. So I booked up the tickets to fly to Manila. And then Mo said to me, we got a problem. And I said, what's that? She said, my passport's going to run out. So I said, well, that's easy enough. We'll just get online. So I got online. First opportunity for a passport interview in Manila, 27th of September. So here we are on the 20th of June. I said to him, we can't spend 4 months in Manila. That's crazy. We just can't do that. What are we going to do? So we had a few words. So she disappeared into her room, and she got on her knees and prayed to the Lord. A little while later, she came out and she said, I've got an idea. I said, what's that? She said, why don't we go into Bangkok and process the passport application in Bangkok, and we'll tell them to hold the passport in Manila, and we'll pick it up when we go there. So we'll fly out on the old one and pick the new one up when we get there, and then we can go to New Zealand. I thought, that's a good idea. So she took a day off work. We go into the immigration department in Bangkok. So we sit and we process all the paperwork, and it was late in the morning. So they said, we're going to close for an hour. You'll have to come back after lunch for the photo shoot. So that's all right. So we're off down to Century 21 place, which is all full of restaurants or whatever. We sit there thinking, oh, well, things are progressing all right. So we go on back to them at 1 o'clock for the photo shoot. And we go in there, and the guy's taking the photo, and Mo said, before we leave here, can we arrange, please, for us to pick this passport up in Manila? He said, no problem at all. He said, my cousin works in the office at the other end. I'll give him a ring. He's a photographer. So he rings this guy up from Bangkok to Manila, and he tells him that this lady's got this passport and it'll be coming through. Will he hold it there? And I think his name was Noel. It was his cousin. He said she'll come and pick it up on the 4th or 5th of July. So, no problem at all. So we snapped all these photos, filled in all the paperwork, and we went back to Pattaya thinking, isn't it great? And so we got on the plane and we flew to Manila. And the following day, she went for a medical. And then we went into the immigration department, and there's this guy. There's your passport. Great. We had the document in our hand on the 4th or 5th or 6th of July, and when everybody else couldn't even get an appointment before the 27th of September. We're talking about the building blocks of faith. The building blocks of faith. You and I have experienced so many wonderful things at the hands of our Lord. We've experienced amazing things. These things solidify in your mind as to who you are and the fact that you have a God that you can totally rely on. In the Sabbath school this morning, we were talking about the anchor. The anchor. Jesus in the heavenly sanctuary, the anchor. And the hymn says, will your anchor hold? You better believe it, folks. The anchor ain't moving. It's only you that's going to move. I was telling Christine, my father was a ship's captain. He had an old saying. He said, those who go to sea in small boats go to hell for fun. You know, a boat swings around on an anchor in all sorts of different weather. But it's you that's going to let go. You've got to hang on your faith. And your faith's going to get built on the experiences you have with the Lord, in the miracles of your life, and the prayers you get answered. Let me share another story with you. This is a double garage. As I told you before, my former wife was a travel agent, so we used to travel a lot. And Fiji was one of our favorite places to go. And one year, we went up there with Fraser and Ann McIntosh. And we went to Mana Island.
And we were walking the beach one night, and a whole bunch of kids came up behind us, all singing Christian songs and waving knives. So we thought, this is a bit strange. Well, the knives were for going up the coconut trees to get the coconuts down, right? So we sort of formed a relationship with these kids, and they took us back to their school. And it was about the size of that, except it had a dirt floor, and it had no windows and no roof. And there was about 5 students. And we thought, where's the rest of the students? They couldn't come to school because they had no money to pay the school fees. So between us, we shelled out about $450. And before we knew it, about 20 kids arrived. And they were all in tears. They were all crying. And they were crying because somebody paid their school fees. When I was at school, if I could get out of going to school, it was wonderful. I would have cried if I had to go to school. But they all cried because they could go to school. So I said to Fraser, why don't we build them a school? What a great idea. Yeah, we'll organise a fly and build. So we came back and I said to the conference, we're going to organise a fly and build. So the next thing, we get organised with that. And as you already well know, poor old Anne, she went down with breast cancer. And well, in short, they had to pull out of the deal. So I got left holding a baby, as it were, to finish this thing. So I went around the churches preaching up a storm for donations for a fly and build. And over a period of time, we raised about $10,000. And that $10,000 was only going to be enough to pay the airfares for this fly and build. And there was about 9 of us going. I went, Ray Newman went, the Holly boys went, Owen and Kevin Holly, and Colin Reynolds went, and Ronald Shute went, and Ron Andrews went, and the fellow Schwarbeck from up in Palmerston North. And just as God, you would expect, about 2 or 3 years had gone by while we're trying to organise this, and I'm thinking we're never going to get this done because we needed at least $50,000, and to go around and try and raise that much money was going to be, it looked like an impossible task, you know. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they had a change in the education department rulings in Fiji, and the government dished out $40,000 worth of building materials. And the chief gave us, I think he gave us 3 acres of land. I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. Might have been 3/4 of an acre, or it might have been 3 acres. Huge piece of land. It was marked out with coconut trees. And so it was all on. Pastor White, if you remember Pastor White, he was working at a union office in Sydney to organise it all. So we had the whole lot organised. And so we turn up at the airport. We turn up at the airport with all our stuff. But being a bunch of builders, they had all their tools and equipment. You know, you've got no idea. They had skill saws, and they had all this building material, hammers, stuff, heavy stuff. You know what I'm saying? And there's 9 of them, and they got all this heavy stuff. And I'm thinking, how on earth are we going to get this on the plane? We're going to get done for overweight baggage. There's just no way we can get it on the plane. And so we're at the check-in, and I said to the boys, look, I'll tell you what to do. This is 1976, by the way. No, 1996, I beg your pardon, 1996. I said to the boys, look, take your chainsaws and all that in the cabin luggage, because that will keep the weight down, because you could do it in those days. So they started packing all this stuff up to put it in the cabin luggage, and then the unbelievable happened. Do you remember John Slade? He was a big, tall guy, a very, very placid man, white hair, very softly spoken. He showed up at the check-in with 3 tea chests full of books for the library for the school. Now, can you imagine what 3 tea chests of books weighed?
I'm thinking, this is impossible. Impossible. So I looked at the girl behind the counter and I said, do you think you could put these on? She's put them on the scale. Yeah, put that on. And the next bit went on, and the next bit went on. And it all went on. And she issued the tickets. And we made our way to the departure gate. And we get to the departure gate. And then we're about to board the plane. And they got all these skill saws and stuff. So they said, you can't bring that on the plane. We said, well, we got no choice. No, it'll have to go in the hold. So they took it all off them and they put it all in the hold. And it all went in the hold. And we took off to Fiji. And here's us building the school. And this isn't a finished item of it, but this is, it was 85 feet long, I think, something like that. It was 25 feet wide. It had 2 classrooms, an office and an entranceway. It was massive. It was a university compared to this thing they had before. Here's a few of us here. There's Owen on the left. There's Reinhold in the back. There's Swarbrick in the front there. There's Colin. And there's Scotty Cameron, who used to be here at church. Lovely guy, fabulous fella. He lent me these photographs, actually. He stood there just behind me. And we finished this thing in 10 days flat, this school. And friends, would you believe, the following year, they had 55 students go through that school, 55 students, and one of them came out as the top student for the whole of Fiji. The Lord is so incredible. The Lord is so incredible. He blesses in ways we would never, ever, ever get to understand. He blesses in ways that we will never, ever come to understand. But this is what builds your faith. And that school, that was built in 1996. So think about it. That's it's 26 years now. I wonder how many students have had a Christian education as a result of that school. I wonder how many ministers that school has produced. I wonder how many people have come to understand God and come to conversion as a result of that school. And that's just one school. One school. So you can understand why God allowed an entire library to go on the plane and a whole load of tools and 9 of us without charging us a dime at the check-in. What an incredible experience. So these are some of the things, that I consider to be the building blocks of faith. You and I need to cherish the memories that we have of the miracles God's worked in our lives. We need to focus on them day by day. That's why I've chosen the hymn I have to close this service. Because day by day, we're growing in sanctification. And day by day, He's preparing us for heaven. So let's all unite our voices and sing this beautiful, beautiful hymn, day by day, because it really spells out the message of what the building blocks of faith is really all about. And God bless you all.